Welcome to Season 4 of the Dobfather. The last campaign was a little bit tight at the end, I don't mind admitting. During this episode, we're going to update you on everything that's taken place during pre-season, and I'll warn you, it's been a lot. Though having just survived by the skin of our teeth on away goals in that play-out against a club from the division below us, I don't want to go through that again if we can avoid it. I thought that we needed to head into this season with a new tactical plan. However, there's been several spanners in the works over the summer that might just put a crimp in our development for the future. But there's also been some very good news as well. Starting with the bank balance, where even though we'd spent more than £1 million upgrading our youth facilities, our run in Europe last season meant that we finished the campaign with the best part of 1.4 million still in the bank. That was augmented by some new sponsorship deals, including a 1-year partnership with a soft drinks company that honestly I am less than enamoured with. I'm not sure that these two brands are really compatible. However, that money meant that I could set about trying to create some club improvements, starting with a coaching course for me, but I was flatly turned down. But there was better news on the facilities front, where the board agreed to improve our youth recruitment, as well as funding a further upgrade to the training facilities to the tune of £1.5 million. However, our luck ran out when we were asking to increase the junior coaching budget. But the board had another surprise in store as they announced plans to build a new stadium, and they've set about trying to find a location for our new 5,000 capacity arena. With a further upgrade to the training facilities to come in November, we're now looking like we have fairly decent facilities for developing our youngsters. And we had even better news as our under-19s finally gained entry to Slovenia's only youth league. And we've had some real development in some of our youngsters over the summer, with several now being deemed by the coaches are operating at a Division 2 standard, with Alan Kotnik, Damian Besiak, as well as young Martin Pushko, who only came in during the last youth intake, and all of these players look like they might be good enough for the first team in the future. But this brings its own problems, as one of our stars, Matija Kaučić, now feels that he's too good for a club of Dob's stature, and he's looking to engineer a move away. Copper have made bids. An Italian club, Verona, are circling in the background. And we've also started to have some of our youngsters being poached as well, with local rivals Radomlia swooping in for one and an Austrian side prizing away another. But regardless, we're going to press on, trying to build a future for this club around the youth players that we're developing. And we spent the off-season trying to put together a new tactical approach that might bring us more luck than last season. And so far it seems to be working, because I've already played the first 6 games of this season just to see whether I was happy with the tactical plans that I developed over the summer, and I think that I am. We're back for Game 7 of Season 4 today, and we're going to be taking on a Radomlia side who've just stolen one of our youngsters, have also only just been promoted to this division, and are as well our fiercest rivals in Slovenian football. But before we show you that new tactic that we've developed, let's bring you up to date on our form, where we played 4 pre-season friendlies, one right at the end of the season. It was a 6-4 victory. One of them, the game in the middle there, we played our youngsters, and in the other 3, we played what we think is going to be our new first team, and it's meant that we've come into the season in pretty good form, and form that we've carried into the start of the season, where on the opening day we took on Telia, and we took the lead through Gregorine. Telia equalised at the start of the second half, but we found another breakthrough on 80 minutes through dirty Denis Valencic. And although we were robbed an opening day victory by a 94th minute equaliser from Telia, we looked good in this game. And the victory we were denied on match day 1, we got on match day 2 as we took on the mighty Maribor. And after an opening goal from Makovic, a second in 2 games from Dirty Den, meant that we beat last season's champions. That win illustrated that we were moving in the right direction, and we got a 2-2 draw with Copper in the next game, 3-3 for Dennis. Before a first defeat of the season came in our 4th game of the campaign, but it was an unfortunate one, as despite going down 2-0, we clearly had the better of the match stats. So we stuck with our system and managed to draw 1-1 with Olympia. And in our last outing, we took on Tabor Shajana, a side that pushed Maribor all the way to the title last season. And despite going behind through a free kick, Luka Gajic equalised before that man, Dirty Dennis, took over. And in the space of just 5 minutes, a player who'd only scored once through all of last season was powering home his second of the game. All of which means we've had a pretty encouraging start to the season, and what's more, dirty Denis Valencic has exploded onto the scene this campaign, scoring 5 goals in the opening 6 games, and he started many of those from the bench. We're putting it all down to the new tactical system that we're playing. And here it is. It's hardly revolutionary and it's not very adventurous either, but it's been effective so far. And when we invented it, we primarily thought that having 2 strikers up front would allow us to develop young Martin Ivacic, who looks like he could be one of the most promising players that we've had through. He was already operating at a Division 2 level when he joined us on the intake day, and now that he's turned 17 towards the back end of last season, we thought we'd try and give him lots of game time this season in order to try and develop him. But we started bringing Denis Valencic off the bench in his place, and he has done superbly. 4 starts, 2 sub-appearances, 5 goals, including 2 that are headers. Now, you'd expect that from a 6'3" striker, but believe me, I've not seen this boy jump during 2 years of trying to nurture him. But this season, it's like that he's on a trampoline and he has been salmon-like, reining in some of the goals. And it means that we now have 3 youth academy players down the spine of this team, or at least we would if we were playing Matija Kaucic, who we've taken out of the limelight because he is getting increasingly sulky and we are approaching transfer deadline day. He's requested to leave. The club he really wants to go to was Verona, but their interest seems to have cooled. We've had about 5 bids from Copper for him. Some of them we even bid up and said, okay, if you give us 2.5 million, as well as Matija back on loan for a season, he's yours. They scarpered at the size of that transfer fee, but he is very unhappy at the moment and had stopped playing very well. So we've just taken him out of the lineup until we get through deadline day, and then he will be restored to the side where Tiegler will probably play as our wide midfielder on the right, and Kasnic will switch over and become the box-to-box midfielder. But the other youngster that's been pretty integral this season has been young Matthias Schalaman. Now, we've had to back a horse in this race. We're going to have to play a centre-half alongside Mitrovic, who is not going to be anywhere near as good. We could have gone for Petek. We could have gone for Rock Schörner. By the way, Rock was developing pretty well until recently, and now he's just dropped off a little bit, and we're thinking about trying to find a loan move for him before deadline day just to get some first-team football for him, because I think we're going to favour Matthias Schalaman this season, who's got an assist and a goal and has played fairly well, although not exceptionally, and we've asked him to be a more no-nonsense centre-back who we're not asking too much of, and we're also asking him to just cover in behind Mitrovic to prevent those balls over the top, because at 6'5", he should be able to head some of those away. And it means that we're going to be trying to develop him as a player that can play alongside Mitrovic. But if it doesn't work out, we've got that young 16-year-old who's developing very well down in the youths. And they are in a league now, and they've started that league really, really well. So the man in question, Martin Puško, is getting some decent football and playing very well. He's 2-footed, a little slow, so we're working on that. But he's already good enough to be playing in the division below, and he doesn't turn 17 until October. He's got a really good personality that I quite like, and our youngsters are actually performing very well in this league table. They are 3rd in it, so as long as they don't get relegated, we are going to have under-19s playing proper youth football against the best youngsters in Slovenia, and we have some of the players that we've already got performing really well. We've got 2 of the 3 top average ratings. We've got the top average scorer as well. So we look like we're starting to develop youngsters with a little bit more potency and potential than perhaps we were to begin with. But we have problems in our tactic as well. Potentially one of the big problems is on the left wing spot here, where we have been playing Ivan Makovets, one of our better players, usually a left back, but we've got another reasonable left back, so we'd moved him up to play as a left winger. He's picked up an injury, which is problem number 1, but he announced the best part of a year ago that he's going to be leaving at the end of this season on a free transfer, and he is going to be a huge miss for us, especially because his deputy, Dino Zenkovic, announced around the same time that he's going to be leaving on a free transfer as well. And in Football Manager, there doesn't seem to be any mechanism at all for talking them out of leaving on a free transfer. Dino decided he wanted to leave because he was never going to get first-team football. He's now firmly cemented in the first team, but I don't think there's any talking him down off that proverbial ledge. And we have two more problems in terms of losing players as well. And unfortunately, they are both in our defence, where Zidane and Mitrovic both had contracts that were expiring at the end of this season. And the only way we could get them to agree long-term deals was to have minimum fee release clauses in their contracts. So little Timmy could leave for £275,000. Fortunately, there's no club sniffing around, and I don't think any would bid that high for him in Slovenian football. But the bigger concern is Darko Mitrovic, who, if we lose, I think we are in trouble, because we're going to have to play two centre-halves that don't get above a 6.5 rating, and his minimum fee release clause just for foreign clubs is only just over £100,000, and that was as high as his agent would let me bid it up to. So if any clubs from the continent come a-calling, we're going to be losing Darko, and we're going to be in big trouble at the back. But for this season, we've looked okay so far. Let's show you the local rivals that we're going to be up against for a big derby game today. Since being promoted to the top division, our derbies so far have been restricted to games against Domžale. But the bigger rivals are actually up the road in Radomlje, where they like to develop youngsters of their own, making this a very competitive town to be doing a youth development save. They were promoted last campaign as champions, and although they're feeling their way into the division this season, they could be dangerous opponents. Their promotion was spearheaded by Juris Barut, and their danger man is Sandy Nuhanovic. This promises to have all the passion of a red-hot derby as Dob travel to Radomlje. And so the game is underway. This is the biggest derby that we have. Forget playing local rivals Domžale. This is the game that means the most to the fans, apparently, and we also need to try and carry on our good streak. I'm really keen to amass as many points as possible at the start of this season, just in case the wheels come off our campaign like they did last season. The magic points total in Slovenia that the press talk about is 40 points, and I'd like to try and get to around 30 in double quick time if we can, so that we can safely say that we're going to be a mid-table team this season. 15 minutes into the game, it's definitely our opponents that have started the stronger, and they've got into our box and they have rattled one off the woodwork. This is not a good performance so far. We've looked fairly composed in our games. Even when we've taken on Maribor and Olympia, we've looked pretty decent so far. But in this game, I think we've given away a penalty with 20 minutes on the clock. It looks like little Timmy Zidane that's done it. These are never turned down in my experience. The penalty is awarded, and we look like we're going to fall behind pretty early in this game. We brought you back for a tough derby fixture, and I'm almost wishing that we hadn't, because we've not looked good so far, despite the fact that Firmishet claims that penalty. And will that allow us to grow in confidence and start some attacks of our own? Here goes Gregorin. You can already see how direct we're playing compared to our previous approach last season. We've been criticised in press conferences for not playing more attractive passing football, but we're going to try and be a little bit more agricultural this season. We've got a higher tempo, and we're asking the players to, as they hit the woodwork again, asking the players to be a little bit less thoughtful in their approach, and instead send some balls like that forward that hopefully Dirty Dennis and Simon Gregorin are going to be able to do something with. But this has been the poorest half of football we've had so far, and we're lucky to go in at half-time 0-0. So we had a game similar to this earlier on in the season when we took on Copper, and we eventually got a 2-2 draw, but at half-time we'd been completely outplayed and created absolutely nothing. And at half-time I dropped the tempo from being slightly higher down to being slightly lower, and it was the only change that I made, and we came out and looked much better in the second half. So we're going to try that little half-time tweak here. We've got plenty of changes that we could make, And maybe on about 60 minutes, we might start making some of those substitutions in order to try and drag ourselves into this game. Straight after half-time, it's our opponents that have got the first highlight of the second half, and they've volleyed it over the bar. On 60 minutes, we're going to make two of those changes. We're going to bring Nate Levet on to play as a left winger. He can play in this more advanced slot, but he doesn't like playing further back. But we'll see whether he can work some magic over there on the left. And we're going to bring on Kaucic to play over in the centre of midfield, despite his sulkiness. And on 60 minutes, we need to try and improve greatly, because I feel like we're just waiting to try and concede a goal. We might just nudge the mentality up to balanced and shout some encouragement onto the players. That's got us all the way through to 80 minutes. We're still not doing anything, and Radomia have an indirect free kick that they've headed into the goal. I think the referee's having a look at it, but I didn't see anything wrong with that. And in fact, I think it's going to count, and we have got work on to do to try and avoid a second defeat of the season. The goal has been awarded. We've been undone at the far post, and it's looped over our goalkeeper. I think he should have saved that one, but we're going to have to go at our opponents a little more now to try and drag ourselves back into the game. So let's up the defensive line. Let's up the line of engagement, and let's also go back to a more brisk mentality and a little bit more direct. And I think we're going to have to make some changes as well. Simon Gregorine has let us down this afternoon. Let's instead get Šípek on. And Dirty Denis Valencic has not had his greatest game either. Let's get Martin Ivacic on, who's going to drop to be a deep line forward. And let's move our two wide players forward a notch to try and get them more into the game. We're going to go positive. We're going to ask both of them to attack. And they're going to see whether they can get some balls into the box to try and score a goal for us. But with Ivacic off the pitch, I don't think there's any point putting any high crosses in. We're going to keep those low and see whether one of our attackers can get on the end of one of them. Now we're on 84, 85 minutes. Nothing is happening for us. It's been a very disappointing game as their danger man sends in another free kick into the box. And now we've got the chance of the counter. We've got 4 up against 2. Can we work it right? We can't. We slow the play down, but we have got Ivacic in. He's laid one across the box, but Šípek's not there. And now he's got one into the box. Levet tries to get onto it. We worked a 4-on-2 poorly on that occasion. And then we lump it into the box, and their goalkeeper claims it easily. I thought as Ivacic rolled it across the box, we might have a tap in. His ball was not quite good enough, but the highlight continues. We're going to go up to an attacking mentality. Ivacic is through again, and he's got another chance to roll one across the box. And this time he does find Šípek via a deflection, I think. But there is young Martin Ivacic. He's looked good twice, breaking behind their defensive line. He's been fed by Gajic. He shows enough pace to get in behind them. There is that very, very fortunate ball across. I think it's actually taken 2 deflections, but Šípek then passes it into an empty net and might just have rescued a point for us. That means that we've still only lost once this season. So certainly not the best we've played this season, but good enough to keep us going in 4th place in the league. And as you can see, we've now got some options from the bench when it comes to attacking play. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said when it comes to the midfield and the defence. But we're going to keep developing those youngsters. We're going to go away and play another 8 to 10 games now, and we'll see whether we can keep up the good form that we've shown this season, or whether we're going to be plummeted into another relegation battle.